Hello, everybody. It's Valor Swanson again with CX in the Cloud, CXC actually, today. Guys, pardon me, I'm a little sweaty today because I just ran downstairs 3 times here before the show to pick up deliveries, and unfortunately, I'm on the 6th floor and there's no elevator. So just pardon the shine. It's not because I'm nervous about today's show. Just a little exercise beforehand. But hey, guys, today we're going to be actually digging a little bit deeper into part 2 of our last week's show, which is how to build a business CCaaS, contact center as a service business case. Part 2, how much does it cost to actually spend less money? And guys, just quick reminder, I used to run contact centers in the US. I used to have a P&L. I had to reduce my budget each year by 10%. whilst increasing the customer base by 10%. So I had to spend money to reduce my operating cost, actually. And I did that through innovation, through process improvement, and through the management of the people. But the technology actually was the area that provided the most bang for the buck when it came to actually improving my cost to serve, reducing my cost per contact. But what we're going to do is remind everybody what we're doing here with the show. So this is a 5-part series that started off with what you must have in a contact center in the cloud, and of course a channelless experience, a connected experience, and an effortless experience. And again, these are all video. These are all been taped, and they're on our website as well as the associated blogs if you want to get more detail on that. But now here we are with how to build a business case as it relates to this technology, and we're in part 2 of it. And then next week we're going to get into how to evaluate your next CCaaS provider. So today's show, part 2, what you need to know to pitch your CCaaS, contact center as a service, business case, and look like a star. Now, I just want to remind everybody of last week's takeaways. They were know your ROI, so you can spend to save. Yeah, I'm going to show you that. Invest in the research and present multiple options. Now, today's show is going to be a little bit different in the sense that I'm going to have lots of slides and some spreadsheets, whereas I normally don't do that. I try to kind of just talk around the topic, use a lot of crazy analogies to drive the point home. But today, again, it's part 2 of a 2-part series within the 5-part series. So take a look at last week's if you're kind of just joining us right now and you're trying to understand where we're going with this. So as you guys know, contact center as a service, cloud contact center as a service, is what unifies and routes customer communication channels by phone, online chat, web forms, text, social media. And this is all done with another layer of technology on top of that, which is AI, machine learning, intelligent routing, chatbots, so forth and so on, so that you can drive a greater customer experience and be more efficient in supporting your customers' needs. Now, before we get going into the spreadsheet, let's just start with a baseline here as far as the cost per contact. So we have a slide here, which actually gives you the average cost per contact. And again, you're going to see me vacillate between dollar signs and euro signs and pound signs because I am in London, and because of the clients that we support, there's different monetary representations here. But just pretend like they're all dollars. If in the US, if you're in Europe, they're all euros. If you're in the UK here, just pretend like they're all pounds because they are relatively close as it relates to the costs here. So call for a contact center. CSR, about $6, £6, €6 for about a 5 to 6 minute call. Web chat, about $5, €5. Email response, £2.50, $2.50, and about 10 pence or 10 cents for the IVR. Now, the cloud contact center provides an immediate out-of-the-box impact on your cost per contact. And we want to talk about why you want to go down that route and how are you actually going to present to your stakeholders how and why and what needs to happen to get that service that service going on in your business, and why it's an economical decision that is actually in the benefit of the business in the long run. Typically we run into situations where you're told that next week's budget is next week's budget, next year's budget is actually going to be reduced, and then when somebody comes across flogging their goods to you, as I said last show, you're actually having to say, no, we don't have any budget for that. But the reality is you're going to find that you actually are spending through opportunity cost more money than if you would have invested in a cloud solution provider or change your channel mix with the cloud solution provider that you currently have so that you're getting a better cost per contact. So again, let's look at these. Remind you again about $5 or $6 per contact as the baseline. Just kind of just have that stuck in your head as we're going through this discussion. So the 3 takeaways from last week's show are going to be the same 3 takeaways. And I suggested last week that you go to accounting, to your finance department, go talk to your favorite analyst in there that has a pocket protector, that one that you hate, or the accountant or the CFO, and ask them how an ROI works and how can they help you actually in the process of investigating your potential provider that you're looking at to bring into your business. And also invest in the research. So of course that means looking on the web, looking at YouTube videos, looking at business cases that are out there, and also working with the provider to help you build a business case. This is very important. They should be able to provide an ROI as well as a TCO. Now today we're only going to talk about the ROI component, but if you want to get into a TCO discussion, we can do that as well. I'm going to briefly touch upon it again today. We did talk about it last week slightly. But it is a whole other realm of understanding financially what the benefit of going with a cloud contact center provider does for you. And of course, the third one here is present multiple options. You don't want to just look at one provider. You want to look at several providers, and you also want to look at multiple options in what they have to offer. So they might offer the basic service, a middle ground service, then the premium gold, the leather seat service, and you want to know exactly what that does for you. Usually with the higher tiered service, you get more features and functions, which if operationalized correctly, you should be able to get a better return on your investment. So how are we going to do this? Now, guys, again, I'm going from a very high level standpoint here, and it goes with, it has to, I have to say this, it doesn't go without saying, I have to say this, that if you're working with somebody, it's going to be a little bit broader and deeper than what you're seeing here. Now, what I typically do is I ask for 2 or 3 months, quarters worth of call volume data, volumetric, what we call it here. And typically, just to make it easy, I can actually just take that data. So for example, what I do is I say, what report do you send to your VP or the VP who sends to the COO on the performance of the contact center? It should be as simple as that. You should, of course, you're also going to have to give, the cost figures associated with your, what you're paying fully loaded levels to your agents, and also as well as to your team leaders and your managers and your director of the contact center, so forth and so on. So they have a kind of, they have the monetary aspect of it as well as the volumetric aspect of it. Now, how do we do this? So first of all, we have to understand your contact center volumes. And we want to make sure that we get a clear understanding of exactly what the customer is experiencing as they're going through the process of reaching out to you, dealing with you, and then post having done some business with you, and how you can use that information to affect your overall demand failure, which is basically how many contacts are coming in because something's going wrong out in the field. And then you use cost to serve or cost per contact as a measure. So the first thing we want to do here is understand the current technology gaps. So we have a graph here that basically demonstrates what a contact center is as a process. Now, I've got a black belt 6 Sigma, and if you're working with anybody Lean Sigma, anybody in that kind of like process improvement world, they'll look at everything as a process. And as you know, anything that is a process, the process has to add value to the process so that each step of the way you're gaining something, or the customer's gaining something, and going through that process. So if you look at the contact center here, there's an input, which is the customer's trying to get a hold of you, they're trying to reach out to you, they're making a proactive touch point there with you. There's a process itself. This is actually when they're interacting with you, either the agents or the technology, such as the chatbot itself. And then the output is actually what happens because the result of that interaction with you, and what was the level of satisfaction, quality, or effort of that particular interaction. And that's where we capture the output. Now, the first thing you want to do is understand the technology gaps that support that process. So what happens here is that you're looking at, for example, an inventory of all your technologies. Are you using AI or chatbots? Are you using RPA, robotic process automation? Are you using contact analytics? Now, this is a hypothetical contact center where we're taking an inventory of what they're using. Anything that's red, they're not using at all. Anything that's green, they're using quite well. And anything that is yellow there, they're using sort of, maybe not fully to, full capacity, getting the full benefits of that particular technology. So as you notice, each one of those technologies is pinned under the process. So obviously a chatbot is the first line of defense that the customer will reach out to you, and then they'll talk to the chatbot and potentially actually have their particular issue addressed or the question that they had answered, so that they won't have to go into the entire process of actually speaking to somebody. So you got CTI there, you have WFM that supports, how do you actually manage the scheduling of the virtual agents or the actual agents themselves, an ACD, predict dollars, so forth and so on. And then on the middle part here, you have contact analytics, screen recording, and these are things that are actually measuring the effectiveness and efficiency of the actual contact itself as it's happening, speech analytics, speech to text, so forth and so on. So you can see, hey, how can we make sure that call is more efficient? How can we maybe reduce some of the talk time? Or how can we make sure that the customer is getting the right level of empathy, so forth and so on. And then finally, on the outside of this particular process, the output, you measure the satisfaction levels of the customer. And of course, you can do this with CSAT, Net Promoter Score, and or customer effort. Now, the reason this is important is because that's where the feedback loop occurs back to the contact center to say, hey, the agent was great, but it took too long if you happen to have more than one question, or we're not going to recommend you, or for example, the effort was high. Now, the gold in these feedback mechanisms is in the text. So if you can capture any free text in there as to why the customer gave you a certain rating, this is gold dust as it relates to how do you improve the process in the middle. Okay, so now you know where these technologies are and how they fit in there. And again, each one of them provide an opportunity for you to answer or address a customer interaction, either through automation, AI, and or through actual humans themselves. Now, once you understand your technology gaps, your technology use and gaps, you want to get into exactly why customers are calling. So this is when you start to track call reasons and the actual kind of get into the root cause of the calls themselves, and you categorize those calls so you actually understand what the quantity is each one of those calls. Now, once you understand that, you understand which calls to automate, which calls to simplify, which calls to answer, which calls then to eliminate, and which processes that you want to improve. So, upon that understanding of the breakdown of these different categories of the types of calls that you're getting, you want to understand exactly what your business outcome is that you're trying to achieve with these different technologies. So, in the next slide here, we're going to look at the business outcomes of the different technologies. Now, there's only so many different outcomes that you're trying to accomplish here. Either contact duration reduction, average handle time reduction. So I always say contact duration reduction sounds fancier, right? Contact deflection, meaning the call goes into the IVR and is sorted, call goes into a chatbot and is sorted, so forth and so on. And then you have contact revenue. Obviously, this is an opportunity to have automation actually do some selling for you, or the customer to pay over the IVR, so you don't have to have an agent do it. Operational efficiency, this is obviously WFO training or WEM, those particular technologies. And then, of course, operational efficiency, again, the RPA, contact reduction again. And all these things happen based on these different technologies and even process improvement. And each one of these should have a different impact in average handle time reduction in the number of contacts that are managed, or increase the number of contacts that are managed in that particular channel, which changes the channel mix of what you need to actually have as far as headcount is concerned to actually answer the calls, because these different technologies are augmenting the amount of calls that are actually having to be answered by humans. Okay, now again, I'm taking what probably takes about 3 or 4 to 5 different slides in an entire little report that actually breaks this down in a lot more detail. I'm giving you a very high level understanding of what you do. So again, I want to remind everybody, just kind of keep everybody on track here. We do an inventory of what technologies you have. You understand what those technologies do from a business outcome, what the solution is that they're providing, and what the potential business impact is of those different solutions. Now, once you get that, you're going to get into, which actually I'm kind of jumping ahead here, is to the crescendo here, which is actually the benefits realization of a higher CX at a lower cost. So the next slide here is where we get into detail. Now, guys, I know you're kind of like, whoa, too much information. Now, here is a company we use some fictitious numbers here, but these are based on reality of another company to actually understand how the model would look with this particular model. So the first thing is, as is, are you currently costing the company $5.53 per contact? Now, how do we derive that? You basically take your total salary cost divided by the contact volume. And so let's say, for example, the FTE, the fully loaded cost is 30,000 pounds a year or $30,000 a year, 200 FTE, and you get your cost per contact. Now, how much are you spending on technology per agent in the current scenario? Now, you might not have a contact center in the cloud, and your cost per agent per FTE per month might be $45. So you see that your technology cost for those agents is a yearly cost of $108,000. But if you were to potentially go with a contact center in the cloud solution, you might pay more per month. But the reality is, because if you notice here in the bottom, the channel mix changes in the middle column here. So, for example, you have an IVR that's handling some of the calls. You have email that's actually going to be reduced, but then you have WFO that's providing some more efficiencies on when the call should be answered. You have a scenario here where quality is going to reduce some of the calls that are coming in because you're increasing first call resolution. Then you have CSAT being actually improving, which means that the customers are satisfied because they might have had a lower effort, so they get through, and again, first call resolution addressed by that. So the channel mix and the performance enhancements from the different components of the cloud solution are actually going to drive the opportunity to actually handle more contacts with the same number of agents. So if you handle more contacts with the same number of agents, because some of them are being handled in the IVR, some are being proactively addressed through outbound, some are being more efficiently answered through proper scheduling. So your abandonment rates aren't what they used to be, and customers aren't calling in multiple times to try to get through or going through multiple channels. You're actually going to be able to handle more contacts. So 1.2 million calls instead of 1.0 million calls with the same number of agents. Then finally, here on all the way on the right-hand side, we have a situation where you might spend $90 per agent, almost $200,000 a year, and you actually are going to be able to take 1.2 million calls with 184 agents. So in essence, you got a potential here with this particular model. And again, each model is completely bespoke, is customized for your scenario, your situation with your calls. But in this situation here, we're saying that potentially with 8% less salary costs, you can handle 11% more contact volume. Now, again, the paradigm shift is here, not 11% more contact volume by agents, but 11% more contact volume because you're utilizing the IVR, you're utilizing chatbots here, 5%. You're using SMS because you're proactively reaching out to the customer through the outbound component of the technology. So the customer doesn't even call you to say, hey, your order's on the way, or we already refunded you. Don't worry about calling us. So you're preempting that call in the first place. So what happens is the technology and channel mix impact creates a situation where the contact deflection is increasing because of the increase of self-service options. Contact duration is actually reduced because, for example, with CTI, the screen pops or ID and V, you're shaving off 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 seconds off of each call because of that all happening in the IVR with your cloud solution before it gets to the agent, so that they don't have to repeat themselves. And that even affects the mood of the customer because they're not having to say, hey, I have to repeat myself, which increases your talk time. So all these things add up. They all add up individually, and they provide an opportunity for you to actually handle more contacts through agents and technology with less full-time FTE. So what happens because of that is your overall cost per contact goes down. Your first contact resolution should be going up, as well as your inquiry rate, because you're taking the quality data, the qualitative data, and feeding it out to feeding it out to the field so that they're not making mistakes. For example, they're not checking shirts before they send them out to make sure that the quality checks are there, so the right size, so the customer doesn't have to call it back in and get a refund, so forth and so on. Or you might be using virtual reality, or you might be using video, or you might be using different channels to get photographs back and forth, so the customer gets the right order in the first place, or refunds it correctly because you got them linked to the FAQ or whatever it might be, because of these different technologies are all within an omni-channel environment. So contact elimination is that last bit there that I was saying. So that's where you have the closed loop feedback through quality and CSAT. Now, I would love to do this for your particular environment if you want to see exactly how this works. And again, it should be no harder than getting 2 or 3, 4 months worth of call center data as it relates to what reports you're setting up to chain. And if anybody wants anything more complicated than that, you're really going to get yourself kind of in the weeds. It's going to get actually kind of, just going to be too much information. You're not going to be able to make those decisions. So now you want to do this here with the last slide. I know I'm going a little bit over, but basically you want to have a scenario where you're looking at, well, what happens if we do nothing? What if we just bury our heads in the sand? So what's going to happen if for example, year over year, your growth rate is 8% and you have a steady inquiry rate of 43%. Are you going to continue to hire agents each year to support that growth? You can't do that. So what's going to have to happen is you're going to have to put technologies in place for contact duration reduction, contact elimination, contact deflection, so forth and so on, so that these technologies actually allow you to use less agents to support the customer growth, which of course reduces your cost per contact and allows you to run a contact center more efficiently. And finally, I'm going to skip right ahead here. Finally, what happens in the next slide here is what you're going to want is actually a true ROI. Oh, too far ahead there. You're going to run a true ROI is when does this kick in? Now, most contact center as a cloud services, they should kick in within a year, those ROIs. If not, with 9 to 12 months, you should be getting your money back and then accumulating those savings over time. Now, remember, each month that you don't do this, you're paying the additional cost, not only in dollars and euros, but the cost of poor customer experience because the customer can't interact with you in a manner that is most effective for them as well. So at the end of the day, after all these spreadsheets and inventories and stuff, you do want a true ROI that you can take back to your finance department that shows when is this money going to kick back in. Now, if you don't have this as part of the presentation, when you're dealing with a cloud provider, then you're missing an entire discussion that goes beyond just features and function, goes beyond just customer experience. That actually you can have now a financial discussion with the wider stakeholder group in your business. Again, I would remind everybody that the reason for this, and we can get off the slide now, the reason for this is that 70 to 80% of your contact center costs is because of labor. Now, I'm not suggesting we're trying to cut heads and march people out of the building, so forth and so on, but the reality is that you can do this whilst growing the business. And then let a natural attrition, people, they attrit out of contact centers, let them quit as they see fit and then not replace them as you normally would. And that reduces the training times, it reduces the learning curves so that the core base of staff that you have actually have the knowledge to be able to provide that better customer service that you need because you're not having to train new folks all the time. So it has kind of a compounding effect. And now this is all about cloud economics. And I'm going to allow you guys to get deeper in this in the blog itself, which we're going to write right after this show, so you can see more tips and tricks as it relates to this. But again, I want to remind everybody the 3 takeaways today are: know your ROI, spend to save money. I mean, it literally works that way, and we can show you how that works. Invest in the research, and actually present multiple options within the reality of one service provider as well as against other service providers out there, because each one has a different mix of features and functions, and those things change your channel mix, which change what's being answered, which change what's being addressed for your contact center, which changes the cost to serve or your cost per contact, which is a true measure of your efficiency over the long run that people can hold you accountable for, as well as the business and how effective it's running its contact center services for the customer base. So, guys, I know this seemed like I was kind of going through this fast because it's a lot of information. This truly is the tip of the iceberg. Reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you about what's going on in your contact center as it relates to your volumetric, your costs, and what your cost per contact is, and do this. Let's just do it as a fun exercise. I love doing this stuff. And see exactly what the benefit is for you by having a cloud customer experience in the cloud for your business. So again, guys, thanks a lot. Next week, we're going to be talking about how do you evaluate a contact center cloud service as a service via 14 different questions. We're going to do 7 questions. The 7 questions is going to be quite interesting, and you're not going to want to miss that. So again, guys, thanks again for joining us today. with customer experience in the cloud with Life Size, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.